Hey guys, tonight we're diving into a story that's less about epic battles and glorious victories and more about the quiet, agonizing weight of a crown on the wrong head. Imagine you've been invited to a royal ball, but the host is a bit off. He's the most powerful man in the world. And yet, you can sense the deep, unending stress simmering just beneath the surface of his velvet coat. That's the feeling we're going for tonight. The reign of King George III is often painted with broad strokes, the Mad King. The one who lost America, but tonight, you're going to step into his shoes. You're going to feel the cold of the marble floors, the scratch of the starched lace at your throat, and the suffocating pressure of a legacy you never asked for. Let's be real. You probably wouldn't have survived it. The constant political backstabbing, the arranged marriages for the sake of the empire, the sheer terror of knowing every decision you make could lead to war or ruin. It's a miracle anyone made it out sane. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're listening, drop a comment with your location and local time. It's always cool to see how far these sleepy stories travel. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You never saw it coming. 1 minute. You're just a young prince. A bit awkward and maybe a little too serious for your age. Trying to live up to the impossible expectations of your grandfather. King George II. The next, he's gone. A sudden, fatal heart attack. And just like that, the entire weight of Great Britain and its sprawling, globe-spanning empire, from the sun-drenched plantations of the Caribbean to the wild frontiers of North America, from the bustling ports of India to the rugged hills of Scotland, is dropped squarely on your shoulders. You are no longer just George, the Prince of Wales. You are now King George III, a title that feels less like a celebration and more like a sentence. You're only 22 years old. You're shy. You stutter a bit when you get nervous, and you'd rather be tending to your gardens at Kew than dealing with the ruthless machinations of Parliament. But there's no turning back. You walk into your first council meeting, the room heavy with the scent of old wood and older ambition. The men around the table are titans of power, hardened politicians who have been playing this game since before you were born. They see a boy in a man's clothes, a puppet they can control. You can feel their eyes on you, dissecting you, looking for any sign of weakness. And you know, deep in your gut, that they're right. You are a boy, and you are weak. You have no experience, no trusted allies, and a deep, nagging fear that you are completely, utterly out of your depth. The first years are a blur of frantic education and overwhelming responsibility. You are tutored in the art of kingship, a ruthless crash course in diplomacy, economics, and warfare. You spend countless hours poring over maps, signing decrees, and trying to make sense of the tangled web of European alliances. You learn about the national debt, a staggering number that hangs over your head like a storm cloud. The 7 Years' War, a global conflict fought for control of trade routes and colonies, has left the treasury dangerously depleted. Your advisors constantly whisper in your ear about the need to raise revenue, to squeeze every last shilling from the empire's coffers to pay for the war that almost bankrupted you. You make a decision that seems perfectly logical at the time. The war, after all, was fought largely to protect the American colonies from the French. Surely, it's only fair that they should help pay for their own defense. This line of reasoning seems sound to you and to most of your ministers, the colonists in America. However, see things differently. They've been governing themselves for decades, enjoying a level of freedom and autonomy that is almost unheard of in the rest of the empire. They have their own assemblies, their own laws, their own sense of identity. They don't see themselves as subjects to be taxed without their consent. They see themselves as Englishmen, entitled to the same rights and privileges as those living in London. This is a common historical fact. The Stamp Act of 1765 It's a seemingly simple law requiring that all legal documents, newspapers, and playing cards in the colonies be printed on stamped paper, signifying that a tax had been paid. To you, it's a necessary, albeit unpopular, measure to balance the books. But across the Atlantic, it's seen as a direct assault on their liberty. They cry, "No taxation without representation," a slogan that will echo through the coming decades. They don't have any representatives in the British Parliament, so they argue that Parliament has no right to tax them. The fire is lit. You watch from across the ocean as your new subjects riot, burn effigies of tax collectors, and boycott British goods. You are told it's just a temporary tantrum, that they will eventually fall into line. But you can feel the simmering anger, the deep-seated resentment, and you begin to wonder if you've made a terrible mistake. Your early reign is also marked by a profound sense of loneliness. You're surrounded by people, but you are a king, and a king is always, fundamentally, alone. You can't trust anyone completely. The ministers who bow and scrape before you one day might be plotting your downfall the next. You long for a partner, someone you can confide in, someone who isn't just interested in your power. In 1761, you marry Princess Charlotte of Mecklenburg-Strelitz, a German princess you have never met. She is brought to you, a stranger, and within hours of meeting her, you are married in a grand ceremony. It's a marriage of state, not of love. But you are a man of duty, and you resolve to be a good husband. Historians still debate whether George and Charlotte's marriage was a genuine love match or merely a successful partnership forged out of duty. While it started as a political arrangement, their long and fruitful marriage produced 15 children and seemed to be a source of genuine comfort and stability for you. A rare bright spot in your increasingly stressful life. You find solace in routine and a deep love for science and the arts. You develop a passion for botany and spend hours tending to your gardens at Kew, establishing one of the most famous botanical collections in the world. You fund the construction of an observatory and become a patron of astronomy. You're a man who, given the choice, would rather be studying plants and stars than politics. This is a little-known detail about you. You were a voracious reader and a collector of clocks. A very meticulous and orderly person who found comfort in the predictable mechanisms of the universe. A stark contrast to the chaotic world you were forced to rule. You tried to impose that same sense of order on your kingdom, but the empire was simply too vast, too complex, too wild to be tamed by a few well-meaning royal decrees. The years tick by, and the troubles with the American colonies only grow worse. You repeal the Stamp Act, thinking it will appease them. But you are wrong. The damage is done. The colonists have tasted victory, and they will not forget it. The Parliament, stung by the American defiance, passes the Declaratory Act, asserting its absolute authority to make laws for the colonies in all cases whatsoever. It's a stubborn, prideful response that only fuels the fire. More taxes follow. On everything from tea to lead to glass, the colonists respond with more boycotts, more protests, more violence. You watch from afar, frustrated and bewildered. Why can't they just be reasonable? Why can't they see that you are trying to do what's best for the entire empire? Your ministers, a revolving door of ambitious and often incompetent men, give you conflicting advice. Some urge a firm hand, a show of force to bring the unruly colonists back into line. Others, more moderate, suggest compromise and conciliation. You are torn, pulled in different directions by men you don't fully trust. You try to be a strong king, a decisive ruler, but you lack the natural ruthlessness that a monarch needs. You are, at heart, a gentleman, a family man, and the thought of sending your own troops to fight your own subjects fills you with a deep sense of dread. But the die is cast. The Boston Tea Party, a defiant act of rebellion where colonists disguised as Native Americans dumped 342 chests of British tea into the harbor. Is the final straw. You and your parliament are outraged. This is no longer just a tax dispute. This is a direct challenge to your authority. A public humiliation. You pass a series of punitive laws, the coercive acts, which the colonists quickly rename the intolerable acts. You close the port of Boston, effectively crippling its economy, and you quarter your soldiers in colonial homes. You are trying to show them who is boss. But all you are doing is pushing them closer and closer to open revolt. You can feel the tension in the air, a growing sense of foreboding that hangs over your court. The American colonies are no longer just a distant problem. They are a ticking time bomb. You are a king who is desperate for peace and order, a king who wants nothing more than to be a loving husband and father, a king who wants to be remembered for his love of science and art. But history has other plans for you. History has decided that you will be the king who presides over the most humiliating loss of your empire, the king who loses America, and you are powerless to stop it. You can feel the tension building, a silent, growing pressure that seems to seep into the very walls of your palaces. It's the kind of quiet before a storm, where every gust of wind feels like a warning and every distant rumble of thunder makes you jump. You're trying to govern an empire, but your thoughts are increasingly consumed by a single, festering problem across the Atlantic. The colonists, your subjects, are no longer just grumbling. They are actively preparing for war. You see the dispatches from your generals, letters filled with a mix of arrogance and genuine concern. They talk of rabble-rousers and rebellious provincials, men who are little more than farmers and shopkeepers playing at soldiers. But you also read about the frightening determination, the passion in their defiance. You are starting to realize this is no longer a simple police action to put down a riot. This is something else entirely. The years between 1770 and 1775 are a series of diplomatic failures and escalating provocations. You and your ministers are trying to walk a tightrope asserting your authority without provoking a full-blown rebellion. But the line is blurred, and you keep stumbling. The Boston Massacre is a particularly nasty blip on the radar. A small skirmish where British soldiers fire into a crowd of angry colonists, killing 5. The news reaches London, sensationalized and twisted by both sides, and it solidifies an image of British tyranny in the American mind. You are, in their eyes, a cruel oppressor, a king who sends his soldiers to murder his own people. You see it as a tragic accident, a moment of panic in a volatile situation, but perception is everything. And the damage is done. This is a period of great internal conflict for you. You are a man of order and peace, a man who believes in the rule of law. The rebellion is an affront to everything you stand for. You see it not as a noble fight for freedom, but as an act of treason, a betrayal of the sacred bond between king and subject. You believe that if you give them an inch, they will take a mile. If you show weakness, the entire empire will unravel. What starts in Boston could spread to Dublin, to Calcutta, to every corner of your vast domain. You are told by many of your advisors that you must be firm, that you must stand your ground. This is the only way to save the empire, to protect the very foundation of your power. But there are voices of dissent even in your own parliament. Men like Edmund Burke and William Pitt argue passionately for conciliation. They warn you that these are not just simple rebels, but Englishmen who are fighting for their rights. They caution against a war that would be costly in both lives and treasure, a war that could tear the empire apart. You listen to them, but their words are a minority in a sea of hardliners. The prevailing wisdom is that a show of force is necessary. You are a king, and a king cannot be seen to be bullied by his subjects. Historians still debate whether a more lenient approach could have prevented the war. Some argue that the colonists' desire for independence was already too strong, while others believe that a different king or a different parliament could have found a peaceful resolution. You, however, are a product of your time, and the pressure to maintain the integrity of the empire is immense. Your wife, Queen Charlotte, is a source of quiet strength during these years. She is your confidant, the one person you can truly trust. You spend your evenings with her, talking not of politics, but of your children, your gardens, and the simple joys of a quiet life. She is a grounding presence, a reminder that there is a world outside of the gilded cage of kingship. This is a common historical fact, their deep and lasting bond. You read books to her, she plays the harpsichord for you, and together you create a little pocket of peace in a world that is becoming more and more chaotic. You lean on her stability as the world outside seems to be falling apart. In 1775, the first shots are fired at Lexington and Concord. It's a surreal moment, a point of no return. You read the dispatches with a heavy heart. The news of the first casualties, British soldiers and American militiamen. All dead in a muddy field. The war has begun. You issue a proclamation declaring the colonies to be in a state of rebellion, and you begin the long, difficult process of mobilizing your army and navy. You are sending your own men, your own subjects, across an ocean to fight another group of your own subjects. It feels unnatural, like a family tearing itself apart. You are a king, and it is your duty to protect your kingdom. But you also feel the tragedy of this moment, the deep sadness of a conflict that seems so utterly avoidable. The war is not going as planned. The first year is a series of frustrating setbacks. Your generals, experienced veterans of European wars, are baffled by the American style of fighting. The colonists don't stand in neat lines on an open field. They use guerrilla tactics, hiding behind trees and stone walls, ambushing your men and then melting back into the countryside. They are led by a man named George Washington, a Virginian planter who, ironically, fought for you in the 7 Years' War. You have a quiet, grudging respect for him, a man who is proving to be a surprisingly cunning and resilient adversary. This is a little-known detail about you. You are a keen observer of your enemies, often reading their letters and dispatches and forming your own opinions of them. You understood that Washington was not a common rebel, but a man of considerable skill and courage. The most humiliating moment of the early war comes in 1776, with the publication of the Declaration of Independence. It's a fiery document, a direct and public denunciation of your rule. It lists your alleged crimes against the colonies, from imposing taxes without consent to cutting off our trade with all parts of the world. The most stinging accusation is that you are a tyrant, a man unfit to be the ruler of a free people. You are painted as a monster, a despot, and the world is reading about it. The document is a slap in the face, a profound personal insult. You are a king who believes in his duty, who believes he is doing what is right, and to be called a tyrant is a wound that runs deep. You feel a sense of betrayal, of utter confusion. How could they see you this way? How could they so utterly misunderstand your intentions? You respond by doubling down, sending more troops, more ships, and more money to America. You are determined to win this war, not just for the sake of the empire, but for the sake of your own honor. You are not a tyrant, you tell yourself. You are a king, and you will not be deposed by a group of rebellious farmers and lawyers. You make a bold move and hire Hessian mercenaries, German soldiers for hire, to bolster your army. It's a practical decision, a military necessity, but it further fuels the American propaganda machine. Now you are not just a tyrant. You are a king who is so desperate to crush his own people that he has to pay foreigners to do his dirty work. The optics are terrible, and you know it. The war drags on. A slow, agonizing drain on your treasury and your spirit. The news from America is a constant stream of both victories and defeats. But the victories are never decisive, and the defeats feel like a punch to the gut. The American revolutionaries are proving to be far more tenacious than anyone in your court ever imagined. You feel a growing sense of isolation. The war is unpopular at home. The debt is mounting. And even some of your closest advisors are starting to question the wisdom of continuing the fight. You are the king, and the ultimate responsibility for this war rests on your shoulders. You are a man who longs for a quiet life, but you are now the central figure in a conflict that will define the rest of your reign and shape the future of the world. And you know, with a sickening certainty, that no matter how this war ends, you will never be the same again. The war in America is no longer a distant thunder. It's a constant, deafening roar. It consumes your days and haunts your nights. You wake up with the weight of it, and you go to sleep with the image of your soldiers, your subjects, dying on foreign soil. The dispatches from your generals are a grim litany of logistical nightmares and frustrating skirmishes. They talk of harsh winters, of supply lines stretched thin across a vast ocean, of a scrappy, determined enemy that refuses to fight by the rules. You read their pleas for more men, more money, more supplies, and you feel a sickening sense of powerlessness. You are the king, the head of the world's most powerful military, and yet you cannot seem to win against a band of upstart colonists. The turning point, the moment that truly begins to seal your fate, comes in 1777 with the Battle of Saratoga. It's a devastating defeat for your forces, a crushing blow to your pride and your strategy. General Burgoyne, a man you had trusted to march his army south from Canada and cut off New England, is surrounded and forced to surrender his entire force. It's a humiliation of the highest order, and the news sends shockwaves across the Atlantic. This is a common historical fact. The Battle of Saratoga is widely considered the most significant turning point of the Revolutionary War. Before this, other European powers had been watching from the sidelines, unsure whether to get involved, but with this decisive American victory, they see a real chance to weaken their old enemy. Great Britain, the French, still smarting from their defeat in the 7 Years' War, are the first to make their move. They sign a treaty of alliance with the American colonies, recognizing their independence and promising to send money, supplies, and, most importantly, their navy. This is the worst-case scenario. You are no longer fighting a rebellious colony. You are now fighting a global war against France and the American rebels. The French Navy, a formidable force, poses a direct threat to your own shipping and, for the first time, raises the terrifying prospect of an invasion of your own island. You can feel the geopolitical landscape shifting beneath your feet. Your empire is suddenly vulnerable in a way it hasn't been in decades. You are surrounded by conflicting advice. Some ministers urge you to fight on, to not give in to the French threat. Others, led by men like Lord North, your prime minister, begin to quietly suggest that maybe it's time to cut your losses. The cost of the war, both in terms of money and lives, is becoming unbearable. The national debt is skyrocketing, and the public at home is growing weary of a war they don't fully understand and a king who seems unable to win it. You feel an intense personal responsibility. You see this as a fight for the very integrity of the British Empire, a fight for the principle of order and stability. To lose America would be to signal to the world that your empire is weak, that it can be defied with impunity. You refuse to consider surrender. In the midst of this turmoil, you start to withdraw. The pressures of the crown are immense, and you retreat into your quiet routines, your family life, and your hobbies. This is a little-known detail about you. You were a skilled amateur carpenter and metalworker, often spending hours in your workshop, finding solace in the precise, predictable nature of crafting objects with your hands. The intricate work of a clock or the smooth finish of a piece of wood was a welcome escape from the messy, unpredictable reality of politics and war. This was your private sanctuary, a place where you were just a man, not a king, a place where you could find a brief moment of peace. The war drags on, a wearying, bloody affair. The French alliance emboldens the Americans and their forces. now better equipped and trained, proved to be an even tougher adversary. Spain and the Netherlands also joined the fight, turning a colonial rebellion into a vast international conflict that stretches across the globe. You are now fighting in the Caribbean, in India, and on the high seas, all while trying to put down the rebellion in America. The resources of your empire, vast as they are being stretched to their breaking point. The war's end comes in 1781 with the devastating defeat at Yorktown. General Cornwallis, one of your most capable commanders, is cornered by a combined American and French force. The French Navy, blocking the Chesapeake Bay, prevents him from being rescued or resupplied. It's a perfect storm of bad luck and strategic brilliance on the part of your enemies. Cornwallis is forced to surrender his entire army. The news, when it reaches you, is a crushing blow. It is the final straw, the undeniable proof that the war in America is unwinnable. When your Prime Minister, Lord North, brings you the news, he famously says, "Oh God, it is all over." And you know, deep in your heart, that he is right. Your stubborn refusal to give up has led to this moment of ultimate humiliation. The war that you believed was a fight for the integrity of your empire has ended with the loss of your most valuable colonies. The cost in blood and treasure has been immense, and the result is a catastrophic defeat. You are a defeated king, a monarch who has lost a war to a ragtag group of rebels. The weight of this failure is a heavy burden, a constant, nagging reminder of your own inadequacy. The Treaty of Paris in 1783 officially ends the war and recognizes the independence of the United States of America. You are forced to sign the document, to put your name to the formal abdication of your authority over a vast and promising new nation. The act is a profound personal humiliation. You, the king, are now a figure of scorn and ridicule. The British public is furious, Parliament is in an uproar, and your own sense of self-worth is shattered. The loss of America is a wound that will never truly heal. Historians still debate whether George III truly understood the depth of the American grievances, or if he was simply a victim of bad advice and his own stubborn pride. Some argue that he was an unyielding tyrant, while others see him as a tragic figure. A king who was simply trying to do his duty in an era of unprecedented change. As you sit on your throne, signing the treaty that gives away a part of your empire, you feel the loneliness of your position more acutely than ever before. You are a king who has failed, and the world is watching. The war is over, but for you, the real battles are just beginning. The loss of America is a humiliation you can't escape. The defeat hangs over your court like a thick fog, and you feel the shame of it in every glance, every whispered word. You are still the king, but the luster is gone. The crown feels heavier than ever, not with power, but with the weight of failure. The national debt is astronomical. Your political enemies are circling, and your own public is starting to see you not as a wise ruler, but as a stubborn, misguided monarch who lost an empire. This is the new reality you have to live with. The stress is immense, and it begins to take its toll. You've always been a man of routine and order, a man who found comfort in the predictable rhythm of life at court. But now, that order is cracking. You find it harder to focus. Your mind wandering to dark, uncomfortable places. You start to exhibit strange behaviors. Moments of manic energy followed by long periods of deep, unshakable depression. Your ministers and your wife, Queen Charlotte, notice the changes, but they attribute it to the immense stress of the war. They see a tired, defeated man, not a man who is beginning to lose his grip on reality. The first major public sign of your declining health comes in the mid-1780s. You have a series of episodes where you become agitated and irrational, speaking for hours in a rapid, nonsensical stream of consciousness. You talk about things that aren't there. You make strange demands, and your behavior becomes erratic and unpredictable. This is a common historical fact. the first public and documented signs of what would later become known as your madness. At the time, no one understood what was happening. Medicine was in a primitive state, and mental illness was a mystery, often attributed to a weak character or a moral failing. The public is kept in the dark, but the court is in a state of quiet panic. Your doctors are baffled. They try a variety of treatments, all of them barbaric by modern standards. They bleed you, they blister you, they force you into straitjackets, and they try to calm you with powerful sedatives. The treatments only seem to make you worse. You are a king, the most powerful man in the kingdom, and yet you are completely at the mercy of men who have no idea how to help you. You are a prisoner in your own body, a mind that is no longer your own. This period of your life is also a time of great family stress. Your sons, particularly the Prince of Wales, are not the dutiful, respectful children you had hoped for. The prince, a charismatic but dissolute young man, is a constant source of scandal and debt. He lives a life of hedonism and excess, a stark contrast to your own frugal and disciplined lifestyle. He and his brothers are often in conflict with you, and their rebellious behavior is a source of immense personal pain. This is a little-known detail about you. You were a very hands-on father, actively involved in the education and upbringing of your children, a rarity for monarchs of your time. This makes their later defiance all the more heartbreaking for you, a constant, nagging reminder of your failure as a parent. The political situation becomes more precarious as your mental health deteriorates. The opposition party, led by Charles James Fox, sees an opportunity. They begin to advocate for a regency, arguing that your son, the Prince of Wales, should be made the temporary ruler. The prince, who is a political ally of Fox, is eager to take the reins of power. The idea of your son taking your place, not just through natural succession but through a political maneuver, is a source of profound fear and paranoia for you. You feel that everyone is against you, that they are all plotting to steal your crown and your kingdom. You have a brief period of lucidity, a moment of clarity that allows you to fight back. You are a king, and you will not go down without a fight. You rally your supporters in Parliament, and your Prime Minister, William Pitt the Younger, a man you respect and trust, defends your right to rule. The debate over the Regency Bill is a fierce and bitter one, a political firestorm that grips the nation. You are a man in a fragile state, but you have enough presence of mind to understand what is at stake. The very future of the monarchy and the balance of power in your kingdom are on the line. Historians still debate the true cause of your illness. The prevailing theory today is that you suffered from a genetic disease called porphyria, which can cause both physical and mental symptoms. The stress of the American Revolution and the loss of your colonies likely acted as a trigger, bringing on the full-blown episodes. Other theories suggest bipolar disorder or even arsenic poisoning. The mystery of your madness is one of the most enduring historical questions of your reign. All you know is that your mind, once your greatest asset, has become your greatest enemy. You eventually recover from this first major episode, at least enough to resume your duties. The Regency crisis is averted, and you are hailed by a relieved public. You appear to be back to your old self, and the kingdom breathes a collective sigh of relief. You return to your routines, your family, your gardens, but the fear is always there. A little seed of doubt in the back of your mind. You know, with a chilling certainty that this is not the end. The darkness has visited you once, and you know, deep in your soul, that it will come again. The crown, which once felt like a symbol of power, now feels like a shackle, binding you to a fate you can't escape. You are a king, but you are also a man, and your mind is a battlefield. With the Regency crisis averted and your mental health seemingly restored, you try to find a sense of normalcy. The kingdom, and indeed Europe, is changing at a breathtaking pace. And you, a man who longs for the quiet predictability of the past, are forced to navigate this new, volatile world. Your Prime Minister, William Pitt the Younger, is your rock, a brilliant and fiercely loyal man who is a master of finance and foreign policy. Together, you try to rebuild the nation's economy and restore its pride after the humiliation of the American War. This is a common historical fact. The partnership between George III and William Pitt the Younger was a period of relative stability and economic reform for Britain. Pitt's reforms, which included restructuring the national debt and modernizing the tax system, helped to stabilize the country and set the stage for its later economic dominance. But the peace is a fragile one. Across the English Channel, your old enemy, France, is on the brink of revolution. You watch with a growing sense of dread as the simmering discontent of the French people boils over. The storming of the Bastille in 1789 is a moment that sends shockwaves across Europe. The French monarchy, a symbol of absolute power for centuries, is suddenly under siege. The old order is crumbling, and the ideas of liberty, equality, and fraternity are spreading like wildfire. You, a monarch who believes in the divine right of kings, see this not as a noble struggle for freedom, but as a dangerous, anarchic rebellion that threatens to upend the entire social and political structure of Europe. You are horrified by the violence and the sheer scale of the upheaval. The execution of King Louis XVI and Queen Marie Antoinette is a moment of profound personal shock. You and your wife, Queen Charlotte, are deeply saddened by the fate of your fellow monarchs. The sight of a king being put to death by his own people is a terrifying precedent, a direct threat to your own power and position. The revolution is a contagion, and you are determined to protect your own kingdom from its influence. The public at home is divided. Some, inspired by the French Revolution, call for political reforms and greater rights for the common man. Others, terrified by the bloodshed and the chaos, rally around you in the traditional institutions of the monarchy and parliament. You are a symbol of stability in a world that seems to be going mad. You lean into this role, presenting yourself as a man of duty, a defender of the established order against the forces of radicalism. This is a little-known detail about you. You use the French Revolution as a way to unite the British people behind you. The war with France became a patriotic crusade to defend the British way of life against a dangerous foreign ideology. The inevitable war with France breaks out in 1793. It's a different kind of war than the one you fought in America. This is a war of ideologies, a struggle between the old order and the new. It's a long, brutal conflict that will last for over 2 decades, a war that will define the rest of your reign and the future of Europe. Your Prime Minister, William Pitt, is the driving force behind the war effort, a man who is determined to stop the spread of French revolutionary ideas and restore the balance of power on the continent. But the war is a constant source of stress, and the burden of command falls heavily on your shoulders. You are a king, and your duty is to your people, to your kingdom, and to the stability of Europe. The war is a relentless, grinding affair, with victories and defeats on land and at sea. Your generals and admirals, men like Nelson and Wellington, become national heroes, their names celebrated in the streets of London. You are proud of their accomplishments, but you are also keenly aware of the human cost of their victories. The political landscape at home is also in a state of flux. The war with France leads to a new era of political division. The government, under Pitt, takes a hard line against dissent and passes a series of laws. The Sedition Acts, which restrict freedom of speech and assembly. This is a controversial move, and it leads to fierce debates in Parliament and public protest. Historians still debate whether these acts were a necessary evil to maintain order during a time of national crisis, or a dangerous overreach of government power that suppressed civil liberties. You, however, see it as a necessary measure to protect your kingdom from the chaos that has engulfed France. Through it all, you maintain your public persona as a stoic, dutiful king. You attend public events, you review your troops, and you project an image of calm authority. but in private. The strain is immense. You are a man who is constantly worried, a man who is fighting a war on two fronts, one against France and one against the demons in your own mind. The darkness that visited you a few years ago is always lurking just beneath the surface, waiting for an opportunity to return. You are a king, but you are also a man, and the pressure is starting to become unbearable. You feel the weight of history on your shoulders, and you know that you are a man who is destined to rule through a period of unprecedented change and turmoil. A man who will be judged not just by his victories, but by his failures. The new century dawns, and with it, a new and terrifying adversary for your kingdom, Napoleon Bonaparte. A brilliant and ruthless general has seized control of France and declared himself emperor. He is a man of ambition, a force of nature who seems unstoppable. He is not just a leader, he is a living embodiment of the revolutionary spirit. A man who has risen from obscurity to challenge the old order of Europe. And he has his sights set squarely on your kingdom, you. A man who has always believed in the power of tradition and the stability of the monarchy. Are now faced with a man who represents everything you fear. The war with France is now a battle against Napoleon. It's a long, grinding, and incredibly expensive conflict. You are fighting for your very survival as a nation. And you are forced to make decisions that go against your every instinct. You authorize the use of a naval blockade, a tactic designed to cripple the French economy by preventing them from trading with the rest of the world. It's a harsh measure, one that causes hardship for neutral countries and even some of your own merchants. But you see it as a necessary evil to defeat Napoleon. This is a common historical fact. The British naval blockade was a cornerstone of your strategy against Napoleon. And it was a major factor in his eventual defeat. But the war is a constant source of stress, and it's taking a heavy toll on your mental and physical health. You are a king in the midst of a global conflict, but you are also a man who is beginning to lose his grip on reality. You have another series of episodes, more frequent and more severe than the first. You become agitated, irritable, and paranoid. You talk for hours on end. Your words a jumble of political pronouncements and nonsensical ramblings. You are a prisoner in your own mind, a king who can no longer command his own thoughts. The public, for the most part, is kept in the dark. Your ministers and your doctors are determined to maintain a semblance of order and stability. They try to manage your illness in secret, fearing that any public revelation of your condition could lead to a new regency crisis, or even worse, a political vacuum that Napoleon could exploit. You are a symbol of national unity and resolve, and your subjects are not ready to face the possibility that their king is unwell. This is a little-known detail about you, the extensive measures taken by your court to hide your condition from the public. Your doctors and ministers wrote letters in code, and public announcements were carefully worded to suggest that you were merely suffering from a fever or a temporary indisposition. The truth was far more terrifying. In your lucid moments, you are keenly aware of what is happening to you. You feel the shame of your erratic behavior, the fear of losing your mind completely. You see the concern in your wife's eyes, the quiet desperation of your children. The crown, which was once a symbol of your power, now feels like a cage, a gilded prison from which there is no escape. You are a man who longs for the peace of his gardens and the quiet of his workshop. But you are a king, and your duty is to your kingdom, even if you are no longer fit to rule it. The war with Napoleon is a wearying, bloody affair. Your forces, under the command of brilliant generals like Wellington, fight on land in Spain and Portugal, while your navy, under the inspired leadership of Admiral Lord Nelson, scores a series of stunning victories at sea. The Battle of Trafalgar in 1805 is a particularly glorious moment, a naval triumph that cements Britain's control of the seas and puts an end to Napoleon's plans for an invasion. But the victory comes at a terrible cost, the death of your national hero, Nelson. You feel a deep sadness at his passing, a profound sense of loss for a man who did so much for your kingdom. Meanwhile, the political landscape at home is a constant source of frustration. Your son, the Prince of Wales, continues to be a source of scandal and debt. He is a charismatic but irresponsible man who lives a life of excess, and his behavior is a constant embarrassment to the royal family. You and your son have a famously strained relationship, a conflict that is both personal and political. The prince is a constant thorn in your side, and his behavior only adds to the stress that is pushing you to the brink. Historians still debate whether your strained relationship with your son was due to your different personalities and political views, or if your mental illness made it impossible for you to have a healthy relationship with him. The tragedy is that a father and a son, both destined to rule the same kingdom, could never find a way to get along. You are a king who is fighting a war on two fronts, one against the most powerful man in Europe, and one against the demons in your own mind. You are a man who is destined to be remembered not just for your victories and defeats, but for the slow, agonizing decline of your mental health. The crown is a heavy burden, and you are starting to realize that it is a burden that you may not be able to carry for much longer. The end is coming, and you know it. The years of fighting Napoleon are a blur, a long, relentless march of victories and defeats. You are no longer the active, engaged monarch you once were. Your mental state is in a constant state of flux, with moments of clarity becoming increasingly rare. The illness is no longer a secret, but a sad, whispered fact of court life. The king, once a symbol of stability, is now a figure of profound pity. You are a king in name only, a man whose mind has been hijacked by a relentless and terrifying force. Your eyesight is also failing. Cataracts, a common affliction of old age, are slowly robbing you of the ability to see the world, which was once a place of vibrant colors and clear lines, is now a blurry, indistinct landscape. You are losing your sight, and with it, your connection to the outside world. The combination of your failing vision and your deteriorating mental health makes you feel more isolated than ever before. You are a prisoner in a dark and chaotic world of your own making, a world that no one else can enter. This is a common historical fact. Your blindness and your mental illness were the defining features of your final years. You spend your days at Windsor Castle, a place you had always loved, but which now feels like a gilded cage. You are attended by a small circle of loyal servants and doctors, men who are sworn to secrecy and who are determined to protect you from the outside world. They read to you, they play music for you, and they try to keep you in a state of calm. But the moments of lucidity are fleeting, and the periods of agitation and confusion are becoming more and more frequent. You talk to people who aren't there. You wander the halls of the castle in a daze, and you sing hymns to yourself in a shaky, off-key voice. The war with Napoleon is still raging, and the fate of your kingdom hangs in the balance. But for you, the war is now a distant, abstract concept. You are no longer a participant in the grand drama of European politics. You are a spectator, a ghost in your own court. Your son, the Prince of Wales, has been waiting in the wings for years, and he sees your decline as his opportunity. He is a man who has lived in the shadow of his father for his entire life, and he is eager to step into the spotlight. The political pressure for a regency is building once again. Your prime minister, William Pitt, has died. It's a profound loss for you. A man who had been a loyal friend and a trusted advisor for so many years. You feel the death of this brilliant man as a personal tragedy, and you know, with a chilling certainty, that the kingdom has lost one of its greatest leaders. You are now truly alone, a king without his most trusted minister. This is a little-known detail about you. You were a man who was deeply affected by the death of those close to you. You had a strong capacity for personal attachment, and the loss of a friend like Pitt was a wound that ran deep. The political situation is in a state of chaos. Your son, the Prince of Wales, is an ally of the opposition party, and they are pushing for a new regency bill. They argue that the kingdom cannot be ruled by a monarch who is no longer in his right mind. They have a point. The war with France is a global conflict that requires a strong and decisive leader. And you, in your current state, are not that leader. You are a tragic figure, a king who is being deposed not by a political coup, but by a disease that has stolen his mind. The Regency Bill is passed in 1811. It's a profound and heartbreaking moment. The bill appoints your son, the Prince of Wales. As the Prince Regent, you are still the king in name, but all of your powers are transferred to your son. You are, in effect, a dethroned monarch, a king who has been put out to pasture. You are a prisoner in your own palace, a man who has lost his mind and his kingdom in one terrible stroke. Historians still debate whether your illness was a natural, biological affliction or if the immense stress of your reign, particularly the loss of America and the Napoleonic Wars, was a contributing factor. Some argue that the two were intertwined, that the stress of kingship triggered a genetic predisposition to a terrible disease. You, in your moments of clarity, might have wondered the same thing. Was this your fate all along, or was it a punishment for your failures as a king? The question is unanswerable, and you are left to ponder it in the dark. Silent world of your own making, you are now a ghost in your own court, a king who is no longer a king. Your son, the Prince Regent, is ruling the kingdom, and the world is moving on without you. The war with Napoleon will continue, and the great dramas of European history will unfold, but you will not be a part of them. You are a man who has outlived his own reign, a tragic figure who will be remembered not for his glory, but for his profound and heartbreaking decline. The end is near, and you can feel it coming. You are no longer a participant in the grand drama of your own kingdom. You are a ghost in the halls of Windsor Castle, a king in name only, but a prisoner in a dark and silent world. Your son, the Prince of Wales, is now the Prince Regent, and he is a man who is determined to make his mark on the world. He is a different kind of ruler than you. He is a man of grand gestures and lavish excess, a patron of the arts and a lover of fashion. He is a man who is living the life you were too duty-bound to ever fully embrace. And as he takes control of your kingdom, you feel a mix of resentment, pride, and a deep, gnawing sense of loss. The transition to the regency is a difficult one. Your son and his allies are eager to undo some of the policies of your long reign. They are a different generation, with different ideas about politics, art, and the role of the monarchy. The old guard, the men who served you faithfully for decades, are slowly being replaced by your son's friends and political allies. You, in your moments of lucidity, are keenly aware of this shift. You feel like a relic from a bygone era, a man who is being left behind by a world that is moving on without him. This is a common historical fact. The Regency period was a time of significant cultural and political change in Britain, a stark contrast to the more staid and conservative era of your reign. But the war with Napoleon is still the defining issue of the day. Your son, the Prince Regent, is a man who is determined to see the war through to a victorious conclusion. He rallies the nation behind the war effort, and he gives his full support to your generals and admirals. The war, which you had started as a defense of the old order, is now a struggle for national survival, a fight against a man who seems determined to conquer all of Europe. You, in your quiet, dark world, are vaguely aware of the great battles that are being fought in your name. You hear the news of Wellington's victories in Spain, the great, bloody conflicts that are slowly but surely pushing Napoleon back. Your physical health is also in decline. Your blindness is now almost total, and your hearing is starting to fail. The world is becoming a blur of indistinct shapes and muffled sounds. Your doctors, still baffled by your condition, continue to try a variety of ineffective treatments. They try to keep you comfortable, to keep you calm, but the episodes of agitation and confusion are becoming more and more frequent. You are a man who is losing his mind, his sight, and his hearing. A man who is slowly being cut off from the world. Cut. This is a period of great loneliness for you. Your wife, Queen Charlotte, is a constant source of comfort and support, but she is also aging and in poor health. Your children, with the exception of a few, are scattered across the kingdom, living their own lives and fighting their own battles. You are a king who is surrounded by family, but you are also profoundly alone. You are a man who is living in the past, a man who is haunted by the ghosts of his own reign. This is a little-known detail about you. You spent much of your time in your final years reliving the past, talking to people who had long since died. You would often have conversations with your friend and former Prime Minister, Lord North, as if he were still alive. A poignant and heartbreaking sign of your profound mental decline. The war with Napoleon finally comes to an end in 1815 with the decisive victory at Waterloo. The news of Napoleon's defeat and his subsequent exile is a moment of immense national celebration. The nation is jubilant. The war is finally over, and Britain is now the most powerful nation in the world. You, in your quiet, dark world, are told of the victory, and you have a moment of clarity, a flash of pride in the accomplishments of your generals and your son. But the moment is fleeting, and you soon retreat back into the quiet chaos of your own mind. Historians still debate whether your son, the Prince Regent, was a good ruler or if he was simply a lavish, self-indulgent man who took advantage of your illness. Some argue that he was a surprisingly competent and effective leader who skillfully guided the nation through the final years of the Napoleonic Wars. Others see him as a lazy, irresponsible playboy who cared more about fashion and parties than he did about the welfare of his people. The truth, as is often the case, is probably somewhere in the middle. You are now a king who has outlived his own reign. The world has moved on without you, and the great dramas of your life are over. You are a man who is waiting for the end, a man who is a ghost in his own kingdom. The long, miserable reign of King George III is coming to a close. And you, a man who was once the most powerful person in the world, are now just a tragic, lonely figure in a quiet castle. The end is near, and you can feel it. The final years of your life are a slow, quiet fading away. You are no longer the king who lost America, the king who fought Napoleon, or the king who battled the demons of his own mind. You are just a man, old and frail, lost in the silent world of your own making. Your physical health continues to deteriorate. Your eyesight is completely gone, and the world is a permanent, impenetrable darkness. Your hearing, too, has almost entirely failed, leaving you in a state of profound isolation. You are a man who is cut off from the world, a prisoner in your own body. You spend your days at Windsor Castle, a place that has been your sanctuary for so long, but which now feels like a tomb. The rooms are dimly lit, the sounds of court life are muted, and the world outside seems a million miles away. You are attended by a small group of loyal servants who are devoted to your comfort and your care. They read to you from the Bible, they play the harpsichord for you, and they talk to you in soft, gentle voices. Even though they know you can barely hear them, they are your only connection to the world, your only link to a reality that you can no longer comprehend. This is a common historical fact. Your final years were spent in a state of deep isolation. With a very small and devoted circle of attendants, your moments of lucidity are now a distant memory. You are in a state of permanent confusion, a man who is living in a world of his own creation. You talk to people who have long since died. You have conversations with ghosts from your past, and you sing hymns to yourself in a shaky, off-key voice. You are a man who is living in the past, a man who is haunted by the ghosts of his own reign. The crown, which you once wore with such a sense of duty, is now just a distant memory, a symbol of a life that you can no longer remember. The public, for the most part, has moved on. The great dramas of your reign are over, and a new generation has come of age under the rule of the Prince Regent. They know you as the Mad King, a tragic, pitiful figure who has been sidelined by history. They have a new monarch, a new era, and new concerns. You are a relic from a bygone era, a man who has outlived his own time. In 1818, your wife, Queen Charlotte, dies. It's a profound and devastating loss. She had been your constant companion, your confidant, and your emotional anchor for over 5 decades. She was the one person you could always trust, the one person who truly understood you. Her death is a final, cruel blow, a moment that leaves you completely alone. You are a man who has lost his kingdom, his mind, and now, his wife. There is nothing left to hold on to. This is a little-known detail about you. Queen Charlotte's death was a turning point in your final decline. The last of your emotional anchors was gone, and you retreated even further into the depths of your illness. The final 2 years of your life are a slow, quiet countdown. You are a man who is waiting for the end, a man who is a ghost in his own kingdom. The great dramas of European history are over, and the world is moving on without you. You are a man who has outlived his own reign, a tragic figure who will be remembered not for his glory, but for his profound and heartbreaking decline. The end is near, and you can feel it coming. Historians still debate whether your final years were a mercy or a profound tragedy. Some argue that your profound state of mental and physical decline meant that you were largely unaware of your own suffering, and that your life was a kind of peaceful, albeit isolated, existence. Others argue that your long, drawn-out decline was a profound tragedy, a final, heartbreaking chapter in the life of a king who had suffered so much. You, in your quiet, dark world, are left to ponder the question in silence. You are now a man who is waiting for the end, a man who is a ghost in his own kingdom. The long, miserable reign of King George III is coming to a close. And you, a man who was once the most powerful person in the world, are now just a tragic, lonely figure in a quiet castle. The end is near, and you can feel it. The end comes on a cold, quiet morning in January 1820. You are 81 years old, and you have been king for nearly 60 years, the longest reigning monarch in British history at that point. You die not with a bang, but with a whimper, a slow, quiet fading away in the dark. Silent rooms of Windsor Castle. The man who had been the most powerful person in the world dies a tragic, isolated figure. A king who had outlived his own reign, his own wife, and his own mind. Your death is a moment of profound national mourning, but it is also a moment of relief. The long, sad chapter of your reign is finally over, and a new era, the Regency, can officially begin. But your story doesn't end with your death. Your legacy is a complex and often contradictory one, a subject of fierce historical debate that continues to this day. You are remembered, first and foremost, as the king who lost America, the American Revolution, a war that you saw as a fight for the integrity of your empire, is remembered by a new nation as a noble struggle for freedom and liberty. Your name, for a long time, was synonymous with tyranny and oppression, a symbol of a king who was out of touch with the will of his people. This is a common historical fact. The American perception of you as a tyrant was a central part of their founding mythology, but a more nuanced picture of you has emerged over time. You were also a man of deep personal piety, a king who was devoted to his wife and his family. You were a patron of the arts and sciences, a man who loved to read, a king who established one of the world's most famous botanical gardens. You were a man of duty, a man who, for most of his reign, tried to do what he believed was best for his kingdom. You were a man who was burdened by a crown he never asked for, A man who was crushed by a series of global events that were largely beyond his control. Historians still debate whether you were a tragic hero or a stubborn fool. Some argue that you were a victim of circumstance, a king who was simply trying to do his duty in an era of unprecedented change. Others argue that your stubbornness and your inability to compromise were the primary causes of the American Revolution. The truth, as is often the case, is probably a combination of both. The greatest tragedy of your reign, however, is not the loss of America, but the loss of your mind, your illness, a profound and terrifying affliction. It's the defining feature of your later years. You, a man who was so devoted to order and routine, were a prisoner in a world of chaos and confusion. You were a king who could not rule his own mind, a man who was slowly and agonizingly stripped of his humanity. Your story is a reminder that even the most powerful people in the world are still just human, and that they are just as vulnerable to the ravages of illness and old age as anyone else. This is a little-known detail about you. Your illness was a source of great embarrassment and shame for your family, and it was a subject that was rarely discussed in public. The tragedy of your mental decline was a private one, a pain that was borne by your family in silence. Your story is a cautionary tale, a reminder that the great forces of history are often driven not by grand ideologies or brilliant strategies, but by the personal failings and private tragedies of a few powerful people. You were a king who was caught in a perfect storm of events, a new and powerful nation rising across the Atlantic, a global war against a brilliant and ruthless emperor, and a terrible illness that stole your mind. You were a man who, for better or for worse, was a central figure in the story of an empire in decline and a new nation being born. And in the end, you were just a man, old and frail, lost in a world of your own making. So tubo seven alphabetes changchulen teptuki. The final rays of the setting sun are now fading from the window, and the soft glow of twilight is starting to fill the room. The story of King George III, a tale of a boy king who lost an empire and a man who lost his mind, is now over. The echoes of his life, his triumphs and his tragedies, are now fading into the long, dark corridors of history. You are no longer in his shoes, no longer feeling the cold of the marble floors or the scratch of the starched lace. You are now just you, a person in a quiet room, listening to the soft hum of the fan in the background. The world of kings and queens, of empires and revolutions, is now a distant memory. It is a story that has been told, a journey that has been completed. The weight of the crown, a burden that he carried for so long, has now been laid to rest. And as the darkness of the night settles in, you can feel the quiet, gentle pull of sleep, a soft tide that is washing away the last vestiges of the day. The sounds of the city outside are now gone, replaced by a deep and profound silence. The worries of the day, the stress of the world, are now fading away like a distant dream. The story of King George III, a story of duty and failure, of love and loss, is now a part of the past, a story to be remembered, but not to be lived. And as the final whispers of the night settle in, you can feel the warmth of the blankets, the comfort of the pillow, and the slow, steady rhythm of your own breathing. The journey is over. The story is told. The